Picture this. You're earning a solid salary, maybe 60, 70, $80,000 a year, and yet somehow every single month you're scraping the bottom of your bank account wondering where it all went. You are not blowing money on vacations in Bali, you are not gambling it away, you are just living your life and still the wealth never seems to build. Here is the thing nobody wants to say out loud. The single biggest financial mistake quietly destroying middle-class wealth in America is sitting right there in your driveway, looking absolutely gorgeous and costing you everything. I have spent years studying personal finance and the psychological traps that keep high earners perpetually broke, and I fell for one of the most expensive ones myself. I am going to break down exactly what happened, what it actually cost me, and how you can avoid making the same mistake. If you are new to Sara Builds Wealth, take a second to subscribe before we get into it, because this channel exists to expose exactly these kinds of hidden money traps week after week. Stay with me through this whole video because the final point I save for last is the one that genuinely changed how I think about money, time, and freedom. If you leave early, you're going to miss the piece that ties everything together. Point 1. The Pavement Princess defined drive through any suburb on a Saturday morning and start counting the trucks. Massive, lifted, chrome everywhere, spotless paint without a single scratch. Now look at the beds. Empty, pristine. Untouched since the day they left the dealership. These are what the automotive world calls pavement princesses. Trucks marketed as hardcore working machines that never actually work. They haul groceries, school pickups, and ego, that is it. I bought one, a beautifully equipped full-size pickup around $62,000 after fees. I told myself it was practical, I might help someone move someday, I would need towing capacity eventually. Sound familiar? The actionable takeaway here is simple. Before any major purchase, separate want from need with brutal honesty. Write it down, one column for actual utility, one for emotional desire, see which side wins. And speaking of costs, let me show you what this thing actually drained out of my life every single month. Point 2. The true monthly damage. Most people think about a car payment and stop there. That is exactly how dealerships want you to think. My monthly note was around $975. Add insurance, roughly $200. Registration fees averaged out to another $50 monthly. Then fuel. A vehicle getting 14 miles per gallon in a world of $4 gas burned through over $300 every month easily. All in, I was sending more than $1,500 a month to a truck that sat in my driveway looking impressive. On a $75,000 salary, your take-home is roughly $4,800 monthly. My truck alone was consuming 33% of that. Financial guidelines suggest keeping total transportation costs under 15% of gross income. I was nearly doubling that threshold. I just could not see it because I only ever focused on that one payment number. The takeaway. Calculate your true transportation burn rate. Every dollar including fuel, insurance, fees, and depreciation divided by 12. If that number exceeds 15% of your gross monthly income, you are already in the trap. But here is where it gets genuinely painful, and this is the part most people never actually do the math on. Point 3. What you actually pay over time after 6 years of payments. I had handed over more than $70,000 in total, plus my down payment. What was the truck worth at that point? Around $28,000 to $30,000 on the open market. The net loss on the vehicle itself was over $45,000. That is $625 a month in pure wealth destruction. Gone, evaporated, but that is not even the real number. That $45,000 invested into index funds at a conservative 8% return over those same 6 years would have grown to approximately $57,000. So the true cost was not $45,000. It was more than $100,000 in wealth either destroyed or never created. $100,000 for a truck that never hauled a single piece of lumber. The takeaway. Always calculate opportunity cost, not just purchase price. Ask yourself what that money would become if it worked for you instead. Still with me? Good, because this next part is where most people go completely wrong even after they recognize the problem. Point 4. The psychology that keeps you trapped. Manufacturers have spent billions engineering the emotional connection you feel toward trucks. The advertising places them on mountain summits, fording rivers, conquering impossible terrain. You absorb those images and unconsciously adopt that identity. The truck stops being transportation. It becomes who you are, capable, rugged, ready for anything. That identity attachment is so powerful that when someone points out your truck never hauls anything, your brain immediately generates hypotheticals. What if I help a friend move? What if there is a hurricane? What if I get a boat someday? You are essentially paying a $1,500 monthly premium on insurance against situations that almost never materialize. The takeaway. Recognize when a purchase is serving your ego versus your actual life. There is nothing wrong with wanting something nice, but be honest about what you are really buying. Point 5. The negative equity spiral here is the trap inside the trap. After 2 years of payments, I owed more on the truck than it was worth. The truck had depreciated fast, but the loan balance had not kept pace. I was $6,000 underwater, meaning I could not sell it without writing a check to cover the gap. Most people do not have that cash sitting around, so the dealership offers an elegant solution. Trade it in and roll that negative equity into a new loan. Of course, that requires buying something more expensive to absorb the difference while keeping payments roughly similar. So you trade a truck you cannot afford for a bigger truck you really cannot afford. The hole gets deeper. The cycle continues. I have seen people walking around with $15,000 or $20,000 in buried negative equity, completely unable to escape. The takeaway: never roll negative equity into a new loan. It is not a solution. It is a trap disguised as a lifeline. Point 6. The rental math nobody talks about here is something that genuinely blew my mind once I ran the numbers. Home Depot rents trucks by the hour. U-Haul has them for comparable rates. A full rental day costs roughly $100 to $150, including fuel. If you rented a truck every single weekend for an entire year, you would spend around $7,500. Compare that to the $18,000 plus annually it costs to own one. You would still come out way ahead renting, and that is if you actually used it every weekend, which the data suggests most truck owners absolutely do not. The reason people do not rent is because renting does not park in your driveway and announce your identity to the neighborhood. The psychological benefit of ownership is so enormous that the financial math becomes almost irrelevant to most buyers. That is the entire game. The takeaway: sometimes renting capability beats owning it by a massive margin. Always run the comparison. Point 7. The two-family comparison that should scare you. Imagine two households, both earning $130,000 combined, both with kids, same neighborhood, similar lifestyles. Family 1 has two vehicles totaling $95,000 in value. Their combined monthly transportation costs exceed $2,600, over $31,000 annually. Family 2 drives two reliable used sedans worth a combined $38,000. Their total monthly transportation cost is $950, about $11,400 annually. That difference is $19,800 every single year. Over 20 years, compounded at 8% returns, Family 2 retires with nearly $1 million more than Family 1. The same job, the same neighborhood. A completely different financial outcome because of one category of decision. The takeaway: vehicle choices are not small financial decisions. Compounded over a career, they are retirement-defining choices. Now here is the part I promised you, the insight that fundamentally changed everything for me. The Pavement Princess does not just cost you money, it costs you time. Those 72 monthly payments represent 72 months of mandatory employment. Months where quitting your job is simply not possible because something has to pay that note. The truck payment does not just drain your account. It chains you to your employer, extends your working years, and quietly steals your options. Financial independence is not really about accumulating some massive number. It is about shrinking your mandatory expenses to the point where work becomes genuinely optional. Every unnecessary expense you carry is weeks, months, sometimes years added onto your required working life. That truck I drove around for 6 years might have cost me a decade of freedom, not just money. Actual years of my actual life exchanged for the appearance of capability I never even used. When I finally understood that, everything changed. So now I want to ask you something specific. Drop it in the comments right now. Which of these traps have you personally fallen into? The identity purchase, the payment focus, the negative equity spiral? I read every single comment and I genuinely want to know. And if this video helped shift how you think about money, that is exactly why subscribing to Sara Builds Wealth is worth it, because that is what this channel is about. Not generic budgeting tips. Real financial psychology, the hidden traps that keep smart, hardworking people stuck, and the specific moves that actually build wealth. While you are here, check out the other videos on the channel covering the sneaky ways lifestyle inflation quietly destroys your progress. Your truck does not define your capability, your net worth does. Go build the real thing.